Today, I want to talk about the concept of making first contact. This is going to be specifically for people who especially are familiar with Bashar type material and the concept of how interacting with the third hybrid race Bashar is part of would be a physically terrifying experience. Specifically, what he talks about is the fact that most of the self-imposed barriers that we're not aware that we place on ourselves would start to collapse in their presence. A lot of things that we consider to be very, very solid, like ideas of space and time, like our ideas of how physical reality actually looks and vibrates, seems to be solid from a very, very low frequency. But as you start to raise your frequency, you start to see things that are a lot more finer, like things like fairies, for example. You might start to see geometry in various ways. Your eyesight might sharpen and beautify in many ways. You might be able to see auras, like the energetic field that all beings have around them. But it's not only that, it's also things that might seem to be solid to you can actually disappear or appear. This is part of the fantastic stories that come with interaction with extraterrestrials, that also come in the form of stories with Christs, masters who exist in our world, and also with what you would consider to be real, authentic magicians. And I'm not talking about illusionists who dress up in very mechanical, like acrobatic ways, but I'm talking about alchemists, like people who are interfaced with reality in such a way as to be able to understand its structure in a more comprehensive way than most of us experience it on a daily basis. Extraterrestrials operate at such a high frequency, a lot of the impositions that we place on ourselves drop out of that experience. I want to use a physical example, a story from my own life, to explain what I mean, just in a very, very light way. I was on vacation with my family and we were staying at a hotel. After I went to sleep one night, I remember I suddenly kind of like slid awake, if this makes any sense. It's not like waking up like how you wake. It's almost like you're already awake in a certain level and you don't realize that you're awake. I don't know if this is gonna make sense to anybody, but it wasn't like regular waking up. It was almost like I said, like you just slid into a state of consciousness that you're not aware of. Sarah's saying our species having the capacity to interact with each other in that level. That's the very, very early level is what you're describing here, she's saying. What I remember specifically about this is three things. One is the sound in the room. Because I wasn't wearing like earphones, earbuds, or anything like that at the time, but when I woke up, what I heard in the room around me was the exact same kind of sound that you hear from like meditation music. It was like a complex harmony. It's almost like that. It was like that kind of like thing. Maybe if I can find like a track to underlay this that sounds like that, I'll do that. So listen for it in the background. But it sounded like if you've ever listened to Hemi-sync or binaural beats, or like the kind of frequency meditations they have, like the 532 hertz or whatever it is, like that kind of stuff that sounds like geometric harmonies being played out. It sounded like that. Like I can hear it around me in the room, seemingly coming from nowhere. And it was like clear that it was coming from the room, not like someone was playing music, but like the room itself sounded like that in that frequency. She's saying, this is not the room, this is us. This is us actually emanating that. You're listening to the sound of the harmonics of our internal geometry expressed, well, you're experiencing it from a heightened frequency. Okay, so that's what she's saying, is that I was actually listening to her. Like I said, I've seen Sarah before, but essentially she was there. Her and another friend were there, and I was listening to the sound of them, and that's what they sound like. They sound like that kind of music. But can you ask why? Why? Okay, this is something I actually haven't asked her, is like, why do they sound like that? Because this is the first time she's actually told me that. We sound like that because it's the process of us emanating our natural frequency through our body's genetics. Just like you heard Damon talk about when the healer put her hands on him. Okay, so there's this experience I have to reference to. One of my closest friends, who was an indigo like myself, and like the only person I really felt like I really had like that kind of like connection with in my life. He told me a story about how he went with his mom to a faith healer, and the faith healer put her hands onto Damon. She said, when I put my hands on him, I hear music. I hear music when I put it on him. Sarah is now saying, that's what you're hearing. But that's also my genetics as well, she's saying. That you literally emit that frequency. If you were in the altered frequency state that you were in at that level, you would be able to hear yourself as well, which might be partially why you're hearing that as well, because you're emanating the frequency. You're just a little detached from yourself, but you can hear it at that level. So what level is that then? So the level that I'm describing is closer to the avatar completed state, but it's still on the very, very early periphery, where you're capable of being if I shift you, but you cannot ever maintain that because you would fall to pieces. Living the kind of life that you're living currently, you would probably self-destruct. That's from her. So there was 3 things, like I said. The first thing was that music. So she's saying the music comes from her and him and from myself, because our genetic design is actually, it's not just yours, she's saying, it's also like all human beings. It's just that yours is keyed to a specific frequency that will sound like that. So you're listening to what humans sound like. If you're at an elevated frequency, you'll hear tones like that, which is what it was. It wasn't so wow, 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 but it was like a tone kind of. But it does sound like meditation music. I do remember that. The second thing that I remember was that it was only on the periphery, but it seemed like there was light in the room, like around me. It seems almost like it was glowing. Now, when I was experiencing this, like I was just kind of like lying like asleep, and I was just woken up. So I was just lying on the bed, but I remember just kind of seeing like almost like a glow or something. Like the room seemed almost light, but it seemed light in like a very pretty kind of way. This is something also that I've experienced a little bit in the light of the third eye. It's like a very, very pretty, like really like feminine kind of like looking light. Like I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's just nothing quite like so beautiful. Like I didn't make this stuff up, but like when people are screaming and yelling about the third eye, and you gotta like Wit-index your third eye or something like that, it's said in like such a hateful way. But when you actually look, like when you actually see a little bit of the third eye itself, it's so pretty. Like it is incredibly like feminine looking. It was like a light, like purpley kind of light. I don't remember the color it was. I just remember the room seemed sort of illuminated. It had like a nice kind of like smooth kind of like light to it in the room. Like very soft, like kind of like light. Those 2 things are things that even right now, I could create some version of them to kind of chill myself out, relax, and be in the mood. But, and this is the thing, this is the main reason why I want to bring this up, because the third thing would seem to contradict that statement entirely. Because the third thing that I noticed from this experience was how my body felt when Sarah slid it into that higher frequency. Because my body was in like a gripped state of terror. Like I was so terrified being in that elevated, pretty, happy state that my body was literally frozen. Even though I could see the light was really beautiful and disarming and pretty. Even though I could hear the natural sounding, beautiful harmonics of that like meditative like music, my body was gripped. Like I was so frightened. When I woke up into it, it was like I slid into a state of being where I was locked and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't move, I couldn't do anything. She's also saying, it's not because we were holding you in some paralysis field or anything like that. That's your body's translation of our natural frequency at that elevated state. For human beings who are watching this, most of you will not be able to live a life where you can get to the point where you can interact with our species, the Yahyel, in that way, in that frequency. It's just not timing for you if you're among those watching it. For the other beings that are watching this, the majority of you who are watching this are probably the people who are ready to have that experience. And part of that experience right now is listening to these words and recognizing part of the connection you're making right now is it's time to attune yourself so that when those experiences happen, you are not in the state that Summer was in. You are in the state where you are ready to move with it. But right now, most of you would lock, just like Summer does. That's from Sarah. But for myself, yeah, it's like imagine pretending in every intimate, deep way that you're a stone that will not move even if someone's about to murder you, is like the kind of fear lock that I was in at that point. Like terror where your body just stops functioning and you're just awake in consciousness. It's like that. And I know what people are saying because people will still watch this video and be like, I can handle it. And it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. Most of you are nowhere near even being ready to have that hotel experience because you're nowhere near the frequency that would invite us in. But even for those of you who are ready, that's where you guys are at right now. Most of you who are going to make contact physically on Earth with our species in our natural context of who we naturally are, you're going to have to move yourself around a lot more than you ever have and literally change your whole mental, body, emotional, psychological, psychic concept of who you are, because none of you really know that you're that frequency yourself, because you can't be it unless you are it, and you can be it, but you've been trained against yourself. So part of the prospecting I'm trying to do by making these videos is to go out there and get people to even just think, just by hearing these words, to think about what needs to occur in your lives. Because this isn't just about changing some behavior or some aptitude or developing a new hobby type skill or something like that. This is about how you see yourselves as people. This is about what you live as your life story. This is about the complete deconstruction and allowance of who you are in the most natural, highest possible light way that you possibly can be. And so this is just a beginner. It's just this little bit of information so that you consider these words and think about what I've said. I heard that music, I saw that light, but in the end, my body was completely frozen in terror. And so would yours be. There's a lot that has to occur so you can be loosey-goosey and like really roll with it, because that is our physical translation as like the lower key versions of those. That's our lower key resistance of our own happiness, healthy wise. So there's a lot of kind of like releasing, so you float to that level, not to that level, but to that beginner level where you can actually have a kind of taste physically while you're awake, not just like something that we retard into you as dreams, so that you can actually walk out there, experience it, and then walk back and go, whoa. It will be a symbol of you beginning the very, very first level of your contact with infinity in a very, very physical, profoundly, undeniably physical way. You will not pass off as dreams. You will not pass off as some retarded experience I had when I was drugged or something. No, you're gonna have this experience completely clean and clear, and it will be life-altering. So my advice from Sarah coming through summer is to allow the natural positive alteration of yourselves currently, such as you naturally exist right now, to be able to open yourselves to who you don't believe the impossibility of your infinity actually is, because it goes on forever and ever positively for all time. My name is Summer. If you like these videos, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you guys are interested in open contact. Let me know if you're preparing for it. Let me know if you think it's a physical possibility in your life, because it is. If you're drawn to this material and excited to even hear these thoughts at all, chances are you're probably someone who's here to live that story, a living fairy tale come true. Have a great day, guys.